This is Travel in 10, a series of 10-minute travel shows from around the world that you can download to your iPod and take with you as you travel.
And now, your host, David Brody.
Well, thanks for joining us today on the Travel in 10 podcast. Today I'm going to be speaking with TV host, author, and adventurer Leon Logothetis. Leon has produced travel shows around the world, done travel blogging for the LA Times, and also written for some of the world's top travel publications. He's also now hosted 3 seasons of the television show Amazing Adventures of a Nobody that airs on the National Geographic Channel, the Outdoor Life Network, and the Fox Reality Channel in more than 100 countries around the world. And now he's also the author of his book, Amazing Adventures of a Nobody, documenting some of the best of his adventures around the world. Can you tell me a little bit about how you first got your start in travel writing and TV hosting?
Absolutely. Well, I used to work in a brokerage firm in the city of London, and I was totally depressed, wearing a tie, going to work, 12-hour days, and I had no passion for my life. And I watched the movie The Motorcycle Diaries, which shifted everything. It's about Che Guevara riding a motorcycle across South America, relying on the kindness of strangers. And I decided, you know what? If he can do this and he can reshift his life, that's what I'm going to do. And I left my business, I left my old life, and I went traveling.
For someone who hasn't seen your show, Amazing Adventures of Nobody, can you tell me a little bit about the sort of premise behind it?
Absolutely. Basically, I traveled across America from Times Square to the Hollywood sign with $5 a day, relying entirely on the kindness of strangers.
And how did you come up with the idea?
I stole it from Che Guevara, because that's what he did.
And you've done, I guess, about 3 seasons of the show now, is that right?
I did a season in England, I did a season in America, and then I went from the Eiffel Tower to Red Square in Moscow.
And where was the hardest of the 3?
Ooh, the hardest was most definitely Europe. And it's funny because the further east I went, the harder it became. It was strange, and it was weird because as we went further east, obviously there's no communism now, but as we went further east, the weather got colder, the clouds got thicker. It was really strange.
One of the things I thought, I watched the whole first season here over the last couple of days, which was brilliant, by the way. For anybody who hasn't seen it, I would highly recommend it. But traveling like this, obviously pretty unpredictable. How did your crew keep up with you? I mean, how did they know where you were going next, and how did they manage to tag along?
That's a good question. Well, first of all, the crew, they were allowed to stay in hotels. They never helped me. So I was basically by myself. If I found someone to help me, then great. If I didn't find anyone to help me, then I was in a little bit of a pickle. But it's very interesting because the majority of the time I found someone to help. There was only one time in all the 3 seasons, and that was in Monte Carlo, where no one helped me. And I ended up sleeping on the beach in Monte Carlo.
And you had the crew in the first season, sort of Nick, Steve, and Sam. You sort of integrate them a bit into the show. Did the same crew travel with you right throughout the full 3 seasons?
Not the same crew, except Steve. Steve has traveled with me on all my journeys, even beyond Amazing Adventures of a Nobody.
So did you know these guys ahead of time before they set out on this?
Yeah, I knew Nick, but I didn't know anyone else.
And did it get a little bit easier as you got further away from the UK, where you weren't so close to home? People could tell from the accent you were from somewhere else. Were they a little more willing to help?
In America, the level of generosity that I received was truly astonishing. And it really did change my life, the American journey, because I realized in so many ways the goodness of humanity. And the Americans taught me that. I was in Indianapolis, sitting on a bench outside a hotel, and I met this lady who lived in Chicago, and she said to me, if you can find your way to Chicago, here are my only set of keys. You can go to my house in Chicago, leave the keys in the flower pot the next day when I'll come back from my trip to Indianapolis. I was like, holy moly. I was speechless. Normally I'm not speechless, but I was totally speechless. I had another situation, again, this time in a little town called Galesburg, Illinois, where a whole town raised $110 for me to get on a train to Denver. I met this guy literally randomly on the street, and we became good friends. I stayed the night at his house, and he went and raised the entire town, to insurance brokers, to bakers, to car dealers, and they raised money for me. I can't accept money, but he could accept it and then buy me the ticket.
There seemed to be in the show sort of a line that you wouldn't cross. I mean, there was one point in the first season where I saw, I think one of your producers suggested you go sleep at a homeless shelter for the night, and you just said, that's not on, that's not going to be respectful. But did you ever feel like you were sort of taking charity from strangers that other people could use more than you, or...
That was a good question. I never wanted to take anything that someone else really, really needed. I mean, I knew very clearly that this was, let's say, a social experiment. It wasn't real life. And I never wanted to stay in homeless shelters. I never wanted to be disrespectful. That's one of the reasons why I could never accept money. You couldn't give me money. It was only kindness, only kind acts, no money. People tried to give me money all the time, but I was like, I'm sorry, I can't accept your money. But if you want to buy me a hamburger, I'll take that.
Have you kept in touch with many of the people who you sort of encountered along the way?
I've kept in touch with a few of them, but primarily I've kept in touch with the guy from Galesburg. We speak quite often. I mean, I've stayed at his house a couple of times after the show. We speak on the phone. I speak to his wife. I mean, his name is Bob. He's a lovely, lovely man. I went to the school of one of his kids and I gave a speech. So yes, I have.
And do you find, did any of them have an impact on their business afterwards? I mean, I think of some of these bed and breakfasts and stuff. I would want to go stay with some of these people now, having seen how generous they were to you on the show.
I hope so. I'm not sure, but I hope they did get some benefit, because they certainly gave me a lot.
So what sort of surprised you the most about people in the countries that you visited?
What surprised me was the level of generosity, the kindness, the goodness. As I mentioned before, I really left this TV series with an understanding of the goodness of humanity in so many ways. How we watch the news, we see all these terrible things. Fine, okay, terrible things happen, don't get me wrong. But mostly the people that I met were good at heart. They were good people. And it was a real joy to experience that.
And now I understand, in addition to the TV series, you've got a book that's come out now as well?
I do. Amazing Adventures of a Nobody. Very original name. Same as the TV series. But you see, the book is a little bit different than the series. The series was really more about the adventure and about the humor. The book is more about the humanity and how I managed to find myself doing this trip. The TV series doesn't really show that. The book shows the history behind my journey, the emotional reactions that I had when people helped me, the relationships that I had with my family, and how they thought I was a little bit loopy for giving everything up and traveling across America. So it's got more heart to it.
And how do you top this now? What's next?
What's next? That's a good question. Well, I've got a top secret TV show actually coming out in June, which I can't mention yet. But I've done a lot of adventures. I drove a vintage London taxi from Times Square to the Hollywood sign, giving free cab rides to people, called the Kindness Cab. I drove a beat-up old car from London to Mongolia, 10,000 miles, giving a free book for every mile, so 10,000 books to the schools in LA. I just like doing adventures. I just like connecting with people and being out in the world.
Well, I look forward to checking out the book and the rest of the season. I watched the first season, but we'll look forward to watching the next couple of seasons now. And I hope when you get your next show up and running, you'll come back on again.
Absolutely. It would be a pleasure.
Thanks for listening. Download more of our travel shows from around the world at www.travelin10.com.
This has been a presentation of Travel in 10.